Now onto the Victorian State Election. It's due to be held on Saturday, November 26th, but unfortunately, I'm about to go overseas on a holiday. So I figured instead of doing my usual election night recap segment, I'd just go ahead and do like an election preview episode. I mean, looking at the polls, the results are kind of so one-sided. It's pretty clear that Labor has this in the bag. So I figure I can just do the whole thing ahead of time. I mean, the only thing this episode is going to miss that a results episode has is some hilarious Anthony Green election night touchscreen bloopers. So if you're missing them, here's some classics for you.
We'll factor in a few more. Sorry, I hit the wrong button. It's the first time all night I've hit the wrong button. But there you go. Ooh, I've got some funny buttons here. Nope, I've lost my receipt run. Let me go to... Sorry, I lost. If the swing... Oh, wouldn't you know, after all these rehearsals. Let me go back to the start there. Nope. This is live television, folks. Let me see. This is the leaders display here. Let me get rid of that. Leaders. I think I've broken it.
Anyways, for those of you who haven't been paying attention, the Victorian election is between Premier and Labor leader Dan Andrews, who is probably best known on this show for this amazing statement of hubris he delivered when New South Wales was in lockdown last year.
We have seen off 2 Delta outbreaks. I don't think there's a jurisdiction in the world that has been able to achieve that, and every Victorian should be proud of that.
And you won't believe what happened a week later, you can probably guess. Yes, Dictator Dan, of course, is known for being responsible for...
the longest lockdowns in the world.
The longest lockdown in the world.
The world's longest lockdown.
The most locked down city in the world.
Yes, not counting Iquique in northern Chile, possibly Manila and Buenos Aires, the year-long indoor dining bans in Toronto, Montreal and Los Angeles, or forgetting about the fact that most of the final lockdown was the fault of ScoMo for not ordering enough vaccines. But yes, all of COVID is definitely Dictator Dan's fault. While we're speaking about COVID, I still haven't had the chance to play you this hilarious clip I found from July this year, which is the Victorian Health Minister encouraging mask wearing.
I made a decision based on the advice that I had received that further mandating of masks was not the most effective way to get the message out about the importance of mask wearing.
Yes, that's right. The most effective way to encourage mask wearing is to legally discourage mask wearing. Good job. Anyways, Dictator Dan is up against Liberal leader Matthew Guy, who he previously beat at the 2018 election, and also who's probably most famous outside of Victoria for this remark earlier in the year when he eulogised Her Majesty the Queen alongside a slightly more mythical royal figure.
In all those monarchs, from figures well known, King Arthur, Henry VIII and so on, the longest reigning of them all was Queen Elizabeth II.
Yeah, maybe next time get your scriptwriters to at least check Wikipedia first, if you can. Matthew Stupidhead Guy. At least I assume that's what your middle name is. I didn't have time to check Wikipedia. Anyways, there's another thing that Matthew Guy is remembered for, particularly by Labor activists, and it's a scandal with a rhyming name.
Nor will it stop questions about Mr. Guy's now infamous Lobster with a Mobster.
But a few Labor supporters were up to their old tricks as well, dressing up with lobsters.
After they were greeted by protesters dressed as giant lobsters.
A call back to Mr. Guy's lobster dinner with alleged mafia boss Tony Medafri in 2017.
Yes, Lobster with a Mobster, and Labor's wheeling out protesters dressed in lobster suits to Liberal events there. And I have to say, I hope Labor is paying those protesters in lobster suits award wages. I bet Dan Andrews would hate to see a wage theft scandal on A Current Affair next week involving crustacean-suited international students singing B-52 songs, not getting paid their super or something. You know, again. Anyways, this guy named Guy, when he was re-elected Liberal leader in September last year, offered this amazing insight as to why he's the right man to topple Dan Andrews.
Do you really reckon you can win?
Yep, absolutely.
Matthew Guy wouldn't say why he was the better person to face up to Daniel Andrews.
And you can do the character assessment.
Okay, we will. You're boring and behind in the polls. Seriously, what is it with these leaders? Dan Andrews looks like the nerd friend your older brother would invite round in high school because he was the only one who knew how to fix the computer, while Matthew Guy looks like the nerd in the high school debating team who would unironically wear a tie in high school thinking it would attract the ladies. Ugh. It's a nerd it's Battle of the Nerds in Victoria. It's a total nerd fest. Anyways, this week Dan Andrews was asked why he should be re-elected, and he didn't exactly offer an amazing reason for it.
You've got a health system in crisis and a record debt. Do you deserve another term?
Well, our health system is made up by nurses, and ambos and doctors, and I'm very proud of them.
Yeah, thanks, Dan. Good stuff. It's a bit like in a job interview if someone asks, why are you the right man for the job? And you go, because of the great co-workers. Anyways, onto the election issues themselves, and you'd think that one of the biggest issues for voters this election would be the holes in the state finances.
Victoria's budget deficit has blown out by a staggering $500 million in just the last 10 days.
The problem is that public investment is leaving the state with a skyrocketing debt, predicted to climb from $73 billion to more than $165 billion by 2026.
Victoria's debt is higher than New South Wales, Queensland and Tasmania combined.
But amazingly, all voters seem to care about are the holes in the state's roads.
Potholes are, I'd say, one of the major issues that are raised by the local community with me.
And the roads out here are riddled with potholes.
There's a lot of potholes and stuff.
Potholes. Yeah.
Lisa Dawson drove through a pothole she measured at 30 centimetres deep.
It actually sliced my tyre in 4 places, like someone had actually just got a knife and sliced 4 places.
Again, proving all politics is local because you're not likely to be late for work due to a $165 billion state debt, but a pothole definitely will do it. So anyways, with all this debt piling up, you'd think that Dan Andrews and Labor would maybe ease off on the big spending promises this election, wouldn't you? Well, you'd be wrong.
Labor's promising free car rego for training apprentices if re-elected. Graduating nurses and midwives will get a $5,000 bonus just for getting a job if Daniel Andrews is re-elected.
The Andrews government will pay for 10,000 Commonwealth-supported nursing and midwifery degrees, each worth $16,500.
$170 million to be spent on improving TAFE facilities.
For $71 million, the Premier's promising 20 new women's health clinics.
$207 million for special needs schools.
$70 million in promises for better maternity services.
But they'll spend $42 million on installing 100 neighbourhood batteries across the state.
$13 million for 6 new off-leash dog parks. To announce $1 million for the Port Melbourne Bowls Club.
Labor extending the power-saving bonus.
An extra $250 for every Victorian household.
The first one cost $455 million.
Typical big spending Labor. Thank God Matthew Guy and those financially conservative Liberals know how to tighten their belts. They're not going to promise too much spending this election. Right?
The state opposition today announced its biggest health spend yet, $2.4 billion to upgrade the Alfred Hospital.
The Liberal Party is hoping a $100 saving on water bills will win votes, promising $6 million to the McGrath Foundation for more breast cancer nurses. If elected, Matthew Guy's government will offer 750 women grants of $7,000 for IVF treatment and egg freezing.
The opposition is pledging to cut rideshare taxes if elected.
The coalition promising to scrap supply charges on energy bills for 6 months.
People wanting to get into their first home won't pay any stamp duty for 12 months.
As the opposition pledged $10 million to grassroots gymnastics.
Riding around the streets of Labor-held Sunbury, promising $160 million to establish 45 extra routes.
Yes, good spending cuts there. Financially conservative Liberals, good job. And speaking of routes, it turns out that it's not just bus routes that the Liberals are looking for.
Bikini-clad models and porn star pages have been linked to the public social media accounts of senior Liberals.
Matthew Guy choosing to ignore a trail of Facebook, Instagram, Twitter and TikTok likes, linking senior Liberals and candidates to photos of bikini-clad women and OnlyFans performers.
I'll let you be the judge of that. You can make commentary on that. I'm not interested in who likes what on social media.
And then there's a bunch of promises from the Victorian Liberals that are so left-wing that even Fidel Castro would be like, I think you better rein it in a little bit there, you know.
The opposition's pledged $300 million to trial a free lunch program in government schools for 2 years. Students would have to opt in to receive the meals designed by university nutritionists and made by local cafes using Victorian-grown fruit and veg.
$500 vouchers would be given to 32,000 priority patients, halving the dental waiting list within 2 years.
The Liberal Party has announced a plan to slash public public transport fares in Melbourne and regional centres if it wins next month's state election. Opposition leader Matthew Guy says all daily fares would be capped at $2.
$2 flat fare public transport fee, $1 concession.
What kind of a socialist utopia is this? Free lunches from cafes, halving the dental waiting list, $2 a day public transport? In New South Wales, it cost me $18 to go to the beach the other day, and that was on an off-peak Sunday. You want to know how left-wing the Liberals' public transport policy is? It's actually more left-wing and radical than the Victorian Greens' public transport policy.
Meanwhile, the Greens were in Melbourne promising a climate ticket, which would grant free public transport to those under 21 and a maximum fare of $3 for everyone else.
Yes, that's right. Only in Victoria are the Greens the sensible economic managers when it comes to public transport policies. What kind of a bizarro socialist utopia is this place? I'd just live on a tram. $2 a day, I'd live on the tram. Anyways, if you're worried about how the Liberals are going to pay for all this, don't worry. Matthew Guy has a plan.
One, we've said no new taxes, and no new taxes means no new taxes. We've committed to no new taxes. We're going to stand by that.
No, he doesn't. My bad. Yes, there's so many Liberal policies this election. Some of them are a little bit disconcerting. Like I saw this one that instead of hiring more doctors, they have a high-tech solution.
To help free up hospital beds, the opposition announced a $66 million plan to install 8 robots that assist with keyhole surgery on cancer patients.
Yes, that's right. Robot doctors. What could possibly go wrong? I can just imagine how it might play out now.
Hello, what medical procedure are you here for today?
Just a checkup, thanks.
Did you say head removal? If so, say yes.
No, just a checkup.
Head removal it is. Please remove any sunglasses and hats.
Meanwhile, over on the other side of politics, some of Dan Andrews' policy proposals would also find a home in Castro's Cuba, like renationalising key electricity assets.
Putting power back in public hands, the centre of the Premier's pitch to the party faithful.
We'll return government ownership of energy.
Electricity is for people, not for profit. So that we can drive down power bills by taking the profit, the private, greedy, corporate profit out of your power bill. And those companies, and this is not to blame those companies, their job is to look after shareholders. They've certainly done that, but they haven't looked after pensioners and families.
What the hell is Dan Andrews proposing that important essential services should be there to serve the people and not just make a profit for their rich shareholders? He's gone mad. Mad, I tell you. Doesn't he know what country he lives in? Doesn't he know who actually runs politics in this country? The last politician I saw propose some kind of madcap scheme like this was Jeremy Corbyn in the UK with the railways, and he got turfed out without winning a single election. And it's not just renationalising electricity, he also wants to renationalise tampons.
While Labor's pledged $34 million for 1,500 free sanitary pad and tampon machines in public locations, including libraries and train stations.
Women and girls, not just at school, but right across the community, can have access to the period products that they need completely free of charge.
Yes, that's right. Dan Andrews wants to make free tampons and pads accessible for women across Victoria. In my opinion, a great policy, long overdue. But my absolute favourite thing about this policy is that it caused Sky News' Chris Kenny to have a complete mental breakdown.
This is just extraordinary. Now, of course, some people will say that as a man, I don't have a right to have an opinion on this. But, if they want to say that, then they should just consider that I'm identifying as a woman for the duration of this conversation. What has he done? He has promised to supply free tampons and pads to all women all the time. That's right, more free stuff for no particular reason. Look, this is something generations of schoolgirls coped without, but suddenly free tampons and pads were supplied at schools. Now, you could make arguments for or against this, of course.
What? Nobody would make an argument against this, Chris Kenny. Nobody. I think we can all agree that women not bleeding everywhere is good for all of us. Only a complete psychopath would argue, well, forget about the women bleeding. It's the taxpayers bleeding that's more important. Oh, Jesus Christ, where does Sky News find these people? Anyways, Chris Kenny continued his insane argument to its illogical conclusion, where, of course, he became accidentally left-wing.
Think about the logic here. Anything that's a necessity and not a luxury now should be supplied by government for free? I mean, food is a necessity, not a luxury. Why doesn't the government supply everyone with free food? What about transport? What about shoes? We all need shoes. They're not a luxury. Why doesn't Andrews give everybody free shoes? And clothes. Hand out the free clothes too.
Yes, Chris Kenny, you're finally getting it. People shouldn't be left to starve to death or have to walk to work 50 kilometres naked. You know why? Because that's what a society is. Oh, next week you'll be realising maybe education should be free for everyone too. Anyways, in conclusion, this election, Victoria, you've got some big choices to make. On the one hand, you've got some big spending socialists, and on the other hand, you've got some big spending socialists with big ears. Yes, on the left, you've got the Labor Party with their renationalising of state-owned enterprises, free education for nurses, and $250 for every household. And also on the left, you've got the Victorian Liberals with their free school lunches and $2 a day public transport. Well, you know, there's always the economically conservative mainstream party, the Greens.